Hello. The first thing to say is that is not a clickbait thumbnail or title. It is absolutely true. I am selling the boat and going back to land. The explanation is going to be quite long-winded. It's going to be a multiple cups of tea and several packs of biscuits kind of thing. But I have brought notes, look, made on an electronic device rather than a scrap of paper, so I wouldn't lose them this time round. Got a lot to say, so yes, settle in for the long haul. First of all, I'll come to the why I'm selling in a minute. There's a lot to talk about there. But first of all, some matters of administration. The boat is on sale with ABNB Boat Brokers. They are the brokerage I originally bought the boat from, so they know it well. If you have any queries, if you would like to see it, view it, come and have a look at it. If you want to know anything about the boat, please, I implore you, direct those queries to ABNB. That is why I'm paying them a lot of money as their brokerage fee. If you put any questions in the comments or whatever, I'm afraid I'm going to direct you to ABNB so that they can deal with it. That is what they are there for. That is what the brokerage is all about. So link to ABNB in the description below, their telephone number, their contact details. Any questions, any queries about the boat, please direct them to the brokerage. What is going to happen to Cruising the Cut? It is going to stay exactly as it is, and I cannot stress this highly enough. Every time I've made a little change on the channel, people come back to me sometimes months later saying, "Oh, I thought you'd stopped," or "Oh, I didn't think you were doing this anymore." So let me be absolutely 100% crystal clear on this. Cruising the Cut, the YouTube channel, is continuing exactly as it is now. Excuse me. There will be no change. I'm going to continue making the documentary videos about the canals that I have been doing for the last year. You may recall I stopped cruising on the boat over a year ago, and I know some people have said, "Oh, are you going to go back to it?" And I always said repeatedly, no, I have no plans to go cruising on my own boat again. I don't know how much clearer I could have been. It was never going to happen because I'd lost the joy of cruising on my own. The novelty had worn off, and doing it on my own just wasn't cutting it for me. So I was never going to cruise again. I switched to making the documentary videos about a year ago. I've been really enjoying making them. They seem to have been mostly well received, and I am going to continue making those. Cruising the Cut does not stop. There will be 1 or 2 videos a month all about different aspects of the canal going forward. No change effectively in terms of the channel. In fact, for the first time ever, I've drawn up a planning document for this year of things to go and film, and it's packed, rammed with stuff all the way through to at least September. So in terms of you, if you enjoy the videos about the canals, they are continuing. I will keep putting those out, no change. And you might say, but how can you do videos about the canals if you don't live on a boat? And I would point out there are many YouTube channels making videos about railways, but the people doing those don't live in railway carriages. Sir David Attenborough makes videos about penguins, but he doesn't live in the Arctic. Or is it the Antarctic? Which one has penguins? Anyway, the point is, I can make videos about canals without actually living on a boat. And in fact, if you look at the statistics, of the 35,000 or so registered canal boats in the UK, only a quarter of them actually have people living aboard. 3/4 are owned by people who live in houses. So I am quite able, I think, to go back to a house and still adore the canals and make videos with the same passion and love for them, just the way that the railway people make videos about the trains. I don't see a clash in that. The irony, funnily enough, of selling the boat and going back to a house is that it means the next couple of videos are going to be cruising videos, because I have spent the last 2 weeks-ish moving the boat from where I've been moored, King's Orchard Marine. I've been there for the last couple of years, moving it round down the Coventry Canal, down the North Oxford Canal, along the Grand Union Canal, and now up the Grand Union Leicester Arm to get to ABNB, who are at North Kilworth Marina. So I've filmed as I went, possibly not to the same extent that I used to, but I have taken quite a lot of footage, so there'll be at least 2 final cruising vlogs worth as the next couple of videos. All those people who said, "Oh, I'll do some cruising again." Well, your wish is granted. There's some cruising. It's because I'm selling the boat, however. And yes, I am buying a house, but not, sadly, Barlaston Boatyard, even with the very generous offers of fivers and tenors here and there from various people. There was no way on earth we'd have made the £900,000 or so that property is going for. And Also, for reasons I will come to, I do need to really be in the South Midlands. So lovely though that place is, that was not a realistic proposition. But I am buying a house, if it all goes through, in a town that has a canal. So I shall still be able to walk down to the canal anyway. Right, that's what's happening. You may be wondering then, well, why, after 6.5 years, are you selling the boat? And there are a handful of reasons, and the first and foremost one is so incredibly dull and practical and got my sensible head on that it's no fun at all. But I'm going to be 53 this year, and there will come a point where I am just not physically able, I don't think, to be on a boat anymore. I'm looking into the future here, but let's assume it's when I'm 70-ish. And yes, I know there are some boaters who are 70, but there will come a point where I'm not really comfortable being on a boat, and I will want to be in a house with running water, flushing toilets, electricity that just keeps coming regardless of the sunshine, that kind of thing. That will come in the future. Now, if I wait until I am 70 and then say, right, let's buy a house now, it's not going to be feasible unless my lottery numbers come up, because the boat will be worth nothing in another 17 years' time. And even if I save every penny I've got, there's no way on earth that savings will be able to just buy me a house. House prices, as you know, are just quite absurd at the moment. They always were absurd, now they're just ridiculous. I don't see that changing. We could probably have a crash, they'll still recover and be ridiculous. I won't be able to buy a house just like that at the time that I reach 70. In order to buy a house, I'm going to need someone to lend me the money, the traditional mortgage. And mortgage companies, of course, require you to have working years ahead of you to pay the money back to them. They won't lend me once I'm in retirement. They'll want me to have it now. So basically, this is all coming down to a matter of logistics. If I want to have a house for when I'm 70 plus, I have to buy it now because I'll need to buy it with a mortgage, and a mortgage company would only lend me while I've still got working years ahead of me. Now, as it is, I've only got 17 years left until I'm 70, and I'll be well retired by that point, or into retirement age by that point. And every year that goes past, that length that they'll lend me the money for goes down and down and down. So the monthly payments go up and up and up, making it more and more unaffordable. And the house prices are going up and up and up, making it more and more affordable. If I don't get somewhere now, I will not be able to afford somewhere in the future, and I will end up doddering around on the boat, really in a facility that won't really be suitable for me in my old age, unable to do anything about it. And so just over the whole lockdown period, I was thinking about, as many people do, you ponder the nature of life and existence and the future, and I just thought, I'm going to have to sort out some long-term planning for me. And this idea came that, well, I need to have a house again. Of course, I used to have a house before I bought the boat. I sold the house in order to buy the boat. It would have been lovely if I could have simply rented that house out and still kept it. It was down in Kent, but obviously I could have then sold it later and bought whatever. But I didn't have the money to buy a boat unless I sold my house. So the house went, the mortgage was paid off. I had some left over, which was very useful for when I started out before I had any YouTube income. And I bought the boat. And I know that there are people who occasionally make little quips in the comments about, oh, you and your YouTube millions. I do not have any YouTube millions. I cannot complain. I do pretty well out of YouTube, but I don't make millions. I'm not one of those YouTubers who has Lamborghinis every week parked on the driveway. It's okay, but I don't have some pile of cash that I could just buy a house with. So a mortgage it has to be, and for all those kind of reasons, I need to do that now. And unfortunately, I can't just get the house and keep the boat, because the boat itself is going to have to form a fair chunk of the deposit money on the house. And what with houses being so much, I just need to bring that loan down as much as I can, and that means having to sell the boat. Now, other reasons are that, yes, I will confess, after 6.5 years of living on the boat, And in particular, the little revelation I had when I went back onto a powered pontoon and plugged in for a month over winter, and the blessed relief of continuous power. I just thought, do you know what? After 6.5 years on board, I quite fancy having water on tap without worrying about my tank, and electricity, and maybe a bath occasionally. Oh, a bath every now and then would be lovely. So yeah, there is a bit of me that is just actually quite hankering for the luxuries of a house. I don't mind admitting it. I would quite like that again. And a toilet that you don't... I don't mind emptying the toilet cassette, but it would be nice just to not have to worry about it again, have a conventional flushing toilet. I would like a bit more space, which is odd because I very much like small spaces. I like my camper van, for example. But you can't really see it here, but it's cluttered as all heck. I've got... my dinette is not usable as a dining room. It's an office, loads of camera gear strewn over there. I've got boxes everywhere. I don't quite know how, but there's just stuff. And I am also massively clumsy. I'm just banging my head on things all the time. The laundry hanging from the ceiling poles annoys me. Just lots of little things where I'm thinking, I want some more space. I want a room that I can do as a sort of studio room for video editing and just be able to move around without crashing into things all the time. And again, that sort of made me think, oh, do you know, wouldn't it be nice to have a... Maybe, if money were no object, I'd like one of those big 80-foot long, 14 feet wide Dutch barge type things that are like a massive floating apartment, and that would have acres of space. But that's not realistic either, not least because I need to be in the Midlands, and those massive things need to be on big rivers like the Severn Estuary or something like that. So just not practical. When I moved on to the boat, I said this will be a 1-year experiment and I'll see whether I like it. And then after a year went by, it was, oh, that was very quick, so I better do it for another year, and 2, 3, 4, and now we're up to 6.5 years. And I've decided that actually it wouldn't be silly to go back into a house as an experiment to see whether I miss being on the boat, or whether in fact I can then say, okay, that chapter of my life is over and I prefer being back in a house again. So I am going to consider going back into a house as a bit of a compare and contrast experiment, and see whether the benefits, power, water, that kind of thing, flushing toilets, actually outweigh being on a boat, or whether the annoyance of having fixed neighbours again. I mean, it might be, oh, please no, it might be that I have horrific neighbours and I'll just be screaming for, I wish I could unplug the house and motor away to another location. I will find out, but none of this is irreversible. If it's all terrible and I think I should never have come back to a house, then I can sell it again and come back to a boat. It's not impossible that might happen. The other reason for going back to a house, as several people have pointed out in the comments, I did say, by the way, this is going to be a long one, there's a fair way to go yet, is that having lost my love of cruising on my own, again, I like going cruising with friends, joining people on their expeditions, but just on my own, it gets a bit lonely. So I haven't been, so I've been sitting there static on the boat, and in a large way, I wouldn't have known I was living on a boat. I mean, sleep in the bed, get up, have a bit of breakfast, go and sit at the laptop, stare at the laptop editing videos, answering emails, whatever, bit of lunch, back to the laptop, have a bit of supper, watch a bit of telly, go to bed. And I have literally got to the point where I've nipped out to the well deck behind me and gone, oh, good heavens, there's water out there. I'd forgotten about that. So it's a bit weird. If you're on a boat, yeah, you've got all the water around you and the ducks and the swans, and it is nice. But there have been many days where I might as well have been in a house and I didn't really notice that I was on a boat. In which case you might say, well, cruise the boat again, get some of that feeling. But as I've already mentioned, the novelty of cruising has worn off. And as I'm chugging along now, I'm just not getting the pleasure from it. And I'm thinking, oh, I wish there was someone else here or some friends around or something like that to just enjoy the experience with. So I have various reasons for not going off cruising again. One of them is family reasons, about which I'm not going to say an awful lot, but I wish to be in a static and accessible location from my immediate family for the immediate future, so that I can be on hand, and I will wish to have my car near to me. So that is an aspect of why I don't want to go chugging off on the boat, because when you are, I mean, at the moment I'm moored in the middle of the countryside. If I needed to get back now, I'd have a problem, because I'd have to either just leave the boat here and go and run off to the nearest road and try and get a taxi to try and find me, or it would be a problem. So yeah, I need somewhere where I can be accessible, or I want to be somewhere where I can be accessible. I've just mentioned socialising, how it'd be nice to have some friends on the boat. I've got this awful paradox of being a terrific introvert. I hate social situations with lots of people or with any new people, and at the same time I really wish I had company and nice people around me. It's an introvert's paradox, where you want to be sociable but actually you don't really enjoy being social, and once everyone's gone and you're back to your own house again, it's like, oh phew, back in my own little space again. But in my own little space I'm thinking, oh, it'd be nice if I had some people around. Anyway, this sort of came to a head over the whole lockdown period. I did go a bit stir crazy on the boat, as I know many people did in lockdown. And when it started easing again, I think, right, I said, I'm going to seize the bull by the horns. I'm going to try to be sociable. So I went onto that meetup, meetup.com website, where there are just groups of people doing all kinds of things. It can be board games, it can be hiking in the countryside, it can be playing football, but people post up groups of, we're doing this, do you want to come and join us? And I said, right, I'm going to do some of that. And I signed up to some walking groups, and I've been on some lovely 9-10 mile hikes across the countryside with complete strangers, which, as I say, as an introvert I really have to grit my teeth to do, but once I'm there I do actually enjoy it, and it's nice to get out and meet people or whatever. So I'm determined to do a bit more socialising. Now, if you're cruising around on the boat, that kind of thing is a lot harder, because not only might you not be near any of the things, a lot of the socialising stuff happened in the centre of Birmingham, for example, for which you need to hop on a train and get into town. And again, although being on the boat and chugging out to the middle of the nowhere is wonderful in one way, because the introvert in me likes that, it also makes it terrifically impractical to try and have any social contact with your fellow human beings. So I want to be somewhere static where I can try and be a little bit more sociable again. Again, this may prove to be a terrible idea, and I'll come running back to a boat and say, no, put me in the middle of the countryside, but whatever. Two final things to mention, which are just that I seem to be a restless soul. Every 5 years or so, I just seem to need to change. I was in IT for about 10 years, but even within that, I did a change from pure IT to working in a sort of TV-related role, and then I went back to IT again. Then I went, no, enough of this, I want to work in radio, and I sold my house, quit my job, sent out, I think it was something like 120 demo tapes, or CDs as they were then, to radio stations, and I went to work in radio, and from that I ended up working in local TV. But after doing some years of that, and then I sold my house, quit my job, and bought a boat. And I seem to be someone who just can't quite find his place in the world, and every few years I go, I need to have a change. And maybe after 6.5 years on the boat, that time has come again. I want to shake myself up rather than just sitting here in a sort of complacent samey every day. The time has come to do something different and see what happens. And in a similar sort of way, I knew the time had come because I was seized by a giant hand. Now, there is a book I read when I was a child. It's a book of the 1970s. Author, I think, is a chap called Michael Green. It's called The Art of Coarse Sailing, and it's a humorous book about his experiences sailing. But one of the things he mentions in that, and it's a phrase that always stuck with me, is that whenever something happened on the boat for which they couldn't account or for which they didn't want to admit liability, they said, we were seized by a giant hand. And I've always liked that. And I've felt that at those points in my life where I've suddenly said, no, I want to do something else, I've been seized by a giant hand. And it's kind of weird to explain, but I've always known at the times when I want to change that that's the time and that is what I should do. There's not really any doubt. The thought just coalesces in my head and I go, yeah, actually, yes, now is the time to do that thing. And that's how I ended up going off to work in radio. And that's how I ended up buying the narrowboat. And now, it was just before December really, the thought coalesced in my head. I went, yeah, I think the time has come to sell the boat and try a house again. And once the giant hand has seized me, it's pretty much going to happen, because it sets in my head that that's what I need to do. Look, this makes no sense. I know I can't really explain it, but that's how it happens in my head. And so that is what is going to happen. The future then, what is going to happen? As already stated, and I want to make it absolutely clear, Cruising the Cut, the YouTube channel, will continue. I'll be doing 1 or 2 videos a month about various different aspects of the canal. So if you have been enjoying the documentaries, please stay tuned. They will be continuing to come. I actually think I will do more cruising not on a boat than I did on a boat. Because, for example, I might now go and hire a boat on a canal I've never been to before, like a long way away, like the Kennet and Avon, or the Scottish canals, or the Lancaster, which I was going to go to in 2020. Whereas on my own boat, I'd never think, oh, I'll hire a boat, because I've got a boat, but then I'd probably never actually move this boat all that way, because it takes you weeks and weeks to get there in the first place. So in a weird way, I think being in a house will make me more open to offers of cruising with other people. I've had offers to cruise in Ireland, in France, in different bits of England. I think I'll be more likely to take those up, funnily enough, than when I'm on my own boat. I've got a very, very slight, vague plan that certainly won't come to fruition very quickly. I did a video about those short trail boats called the Wilderness Beavers, and I also showed them in the recent video from the Boat Life live show. And I really like them. I think it's my camper van instinct is kicking in, because they're kind of cutesy like a camper van. And they do sell them now. They're making them new again. And they sell them as a empty shell, just perhaps with windows and doors, and you can fit it out yourself. And I have got this plan. It'll have to wait until I've got some money again, which won't be anytime soon, what with paying money on a house. But I quite fancy the idea of buying a shell, brand new, of a Wilderness Beaver, and then fitting it out. And it will be just like doing my camper van, but fitting out a boat. And then once you've got a trail boat, it goes on a trailer. I could tow it behind the camper van and take it to various different canals and do weeks holiday here, weeks holiday there again. So in a weird way, there might be more cruising coming through that. And ultimately, who knows, I may end up back on another narrowboat again at some point. But for now, I think this is the right thing to do. The notion of the mortgage and the price of everything is scaring me witless. It's a huge amount of money, but you cannot buy anywhere for not a lot of money at the moment. I mean, if I went to the very north of England, houses are cheaper, but it won't work. I need to be in the South Midlands for family, and also the Midlands is kind of where it's at for getting to the canals to make the canal videos. If I go too far north or south, it just makes the travelling and the logistics not feasible. So the Midlands it is. It could all prove to be a horrific mistake, and I will regret, and I'll say, oh, woe is me, why did I sell the boat? But I'm not going to the moon. It's reversible if I need to. I could sell the house and buy another boat if I suddenly think, actually, that was a terrible idea. But for the moment, I want a house for the future, for future me, who is old and doddery. All right, more old and doddery than I am already. And that's the practical reason for doing it. But then there is these other factors that have sort of worked their way in that made me think, yeah, now is the time to do it. So there you go. That is what is happening. Again, if you're interested in the boat, ABNB Boat Brokerage, North Kilworth Marina, contact details in the description below. I hope all that made sense, and I hope it wasn't too much of a shock. But there we go. Anyway, thanks for watching if you got to this point. Cheerio.